Your brain has a hidden emergency mode, and when it turns on, it makes smart people do stupid things. You know the feeling. Your heart speeds up. Your thoughts get noisy. You start doom scrolling in your own head. One mistake becomes 10. A simple conversation turns into a spiral. Under pressure, your mind doesn't rise. It narrows. But some people do the opposite. The pressure hits and they expand. They see options. They stay calm. They choose the next move like it's obvious. Here's a real moment where that difference is caught in public. Wimbledon, July 14th, 2019. Roger Federer is 1 point away for the championship. Not once, but twice. Fifth set, 8-7, 40-15. The crowd is ready. The story is finished. And Novak Djokovic doesn't flinch. He saves both championship points. He resets. He drags the match into a tiebreak. And he wins the title after nearly 5 hours. Most athletes can play well when they're ahead. A strong mind plays well when the world is telling you it's over. Now zoom out because there's an even stranger example. A man named Alex Honnold climbs a 3,000-foot granite wall with no rope. No safety net. No second chance. Later, scientists put him in an fMRI scanner and show him high arousal images. In most people, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires hard. In Honnold, it's almost quiet. So what are we looking at? A rare brain that doesn't panic, or a trained brain that knows how to shut panic down? Because that question isn't about climbers or champions. It's about you. Why do you sometimes lock in, stay steady, and perform, and other times you collapse under smaller pressure that shouldn't even matter? In the next minutes, you're going to see the exact psychological pattern that separates strong minds from overwhelmed minds. And the first step to building it starts with a paradox that almost everyone gets wrong. Most people think a strong mind is just being positive. Smile, believe, repeat a mantra, pretend everything is fine. And sometimes that works until it doesn't. Because under real pressure, fake positivity collapses. It feels like lying to yourself. And your brain knows it. Strong minds run a different operating system. It's not blind optimism. It's a very specific combination. Stubborn faith in the outcome, paired with ruthless honesty about the moment you're in. That paradox shows up everywhere. A team is behind late in the game. A surgeon faces an unexpected complication. A pilot loses an engine. A founder watches cash run low. The weakest move is either denial or panic. The strongest move is clarity. Here's what that clarity looks like in psychology. Mentally strong people tend to score high on 4 abilities. First, control. Not control of life. Control of response. Their feelings surge like anyone else, but they don't get dragged around by them. Second, commitment. They don't negotiate with the goal every time it gets uncomfortable. They decide, then they execute. Third, challenge. They don't interpret stress as proof they're failing. They interpret it as the price of growth. And fourth, confidence. Not loud confidence. Quiet confidence. The belief that, even if this goes badly, they'll handle the next step. If you've ever watched someone stay calm while everyone else melts down, you're watching those 4 traits in motion. And here's the part that makes this personal. You already have moments like that. Think about the last time you surprised yourself. You handled a hard conversation. You finished something when you wanted to quit. You didn't spiral. You stayed steady. That wasn't luck. That was a pattern. And patterns can be trained. But to train it, you need to understand the enemy. It's not weakness. It's not laziness. It's biology. Because when stress hits, your brain has a built-in switch that can shut down clear thinking and hand the keys to the alarm system. And once you see how that switch works, you can learn how to interrupt it fast. When stress hits, your brain doesn't ask for permission. It flips a circuit. 1 second you're calm. Next second your body is hot. Your jaw is tight. Your thoughts are racing, and you can't access the part of you that usually sounds intelligent. You felt it in small ways. Someone asks you a simple question in a meeting, and your mind goes blank. You reread the same sentence 5 times, and it won't land. You open your phone to do one thing, and 30 minutes disappears. You know what the right move is, but you can't do it. That isn't laziness. It's a brain state. Under pressure, the amygdala, your alarm system, starts acting like a smoke detector. It doesn't care if the fire is real danger or just social embarrassment. It pulls the lever anyway. And when that alarm is loud enough, stress chemicals surge through the brain and your prefrontal cortex. The part that plans, prioritizes, and holds perspective gets weaker. Connections loosen. Your thinking narrows. You fall back into habits. Impulses. Worst-case stories. That's why you can be brilliant on a calm day and clumsy on a stressful one. So what makes a strong mind different? Not the absence of stress. It's the speed of recovery. Mentally strong people still feel the spike. They just don't stay there. They return to clear thinking faster. They notice the alarm without obeying it. They don't treat every sensation as a command. And here's the twist. The fastest way back to control isn't force. It's a skill, regulation. You teach your nervous system, over time, that discomfort doesn't equal danger. You train your brain to keep the thinking regions online even when your body is screaming. That's why some people can perform when it matters. Their brain has rehearsed the return path. So the real question becomes simple. What is the return path? What do strong-minded people do in the first 10 seconds of pressure that keeps them from spiraling like everyone else? Because once you learn that, you can build it. And it starts with one surprisingly small switch you can flip with your own breath. If your mind panics easily, you're probably trying to solve the wrong problem. You keep fighting the thoughts. You argue with yourself. You push harder. You say, calm down, and your body ignores you. Because the fastest lever isn't thoughts. It's physiology. Your breath is one of the only places where you can grab the steering wheel directly. When you breathe fast and shallow, your brain reads it as danger. When you slow the exhale, your nervous system gets a message. You're safe enough to think. That's why people who perform under pressure often have weird little rituals. Not because they're superstitious, because they're regulating their state. Here's a simple pattern strong-minded people use, sometimes without even realizing it. They zoom in, then they zoom out. Zoom in, one breath, one task, one next move. The mind stops trying to solve the entire universe. Zoom out, perspective. This is a moment, not a life sentence. This is uncomfortable, not catastrophic. That two-step breaks the spiral. And once the spiral breaks, the next trait kicks in. Grit. Grit isn't intensity. It's endurance. It's showing up on the day you don't feel inspired. It's staying committed when the reward is delayed. It's the ability to keep moving even when your emotions vote no. Psychologist Angela Duckworth studied grit across high-pressure environments and found something uncomfortable. Grit predicts long-term achievement better than raw talent in many settings. Not because talented people fail, but because without perseverance, talent doesn't get enough reps to become skill. If you've ever started something and quit when it got boring, you know the opposite of grit. And if you've ever stayed with something long enough to get good, you've tasted it. So how do you build it? Strong-minded people don't rely on motivation. They rely on identity and systems. They decide who they are. Then they set the smallest daily action that proves it. Not once. Repeated. That's how resilience becomes automatic. Not heroic. Automatic. But there's still one problem. What about fear? What about the moment your body screams, don't do it, even when you know you should? That's where the most extreme example teaches the clearest lesson. Fear feels like truth. That's what makes it powerful. Your body says, this is unsafe, and your mind translates it into, I can't handle this. You avoid. You delay. You shrink your life to match your comfort. And then you call it personality. But fear is often just unfamiliarity plus imagination. This is where Alex Honnold becomes useful, not as a role model you have to copy, but as a clue. Scientists put him in a brain scanner and expected a normal reaction to high arousal images. Amygdala firing, fear circuitry lighting up. They didn't get it. His fear center barely reacts. That doesn't mean he's invincible. It means one of two things is happening. Either he's naturally less reactive, or he's trained a regulatory system so strong that the fear signal gets turned down before it takes over. And that second possibility matters to you, because it means courage isn't a personality. It's a process. Honnold doesn't wake up and flip a coin on risk. He builds certainty through preparation. He rehearses. He visualizes. He reduces unknowns until his brain stops seeing chaos and starts seeing a sequence. That's how strong-minded people handle fear. They don't argue with it. They train around it. They use progressive exposure. Small, controlled challenges that teach the nervous system, we can do this. Then they raise the difficulty slightly. Again and again. That's why the person who looks fearless today was usually terrified earlier in the journey. They just kept going one manageable step at a time until the brain updated its prediction. You can do the same. If you fear rejection, you don't start by confessing your deepest feelings. You start by making small asks, small risks, small discomforts that don't break you. If you fear public speaking, you don't start with 1,000 people. You start with 1 minute to one person, then 5, then 10. You don't conquer fear by thinking. You conquer it by training the brain's expectation system. And the moment you do that, something changes. You stop asking, how do I get rid of fear? You start asking, what would I do if fear wasn't allowed to decide? And that question leads to the real foundation of extremely strong minds. Meaning, purpose, a why that's bigger than comfort. There's a reason some people can endure discomfort that would crush others. It's not because their lives are easier. It's because their why is stronger than they are now. When your only goal is comfort, any stress feels like an emergency. But when you're anchored to meaning, stress becomes information. It becomes a price you're willing to pay. You can see this in elite performers, top surgeons, founders, athletes, even parents holding a family together. The ones with strong minds aren't always the most gifted. They're the most anchored. They know what they stand for. They know what they're building. They know what matters. And that meaning does something powerful to the brain. It changes the interpretation of pain. It turns I can't into I must. This is also why aimless stress feels unbearable. If you've ever worked hard on something that doesn't matter to you, you know the special kind of exhaustion it creates. Your body is tired, but your soul is empty. And the mind starts breaking down because it has no reason to carry the load. So the question becomes uncomfortable again. What are you suffering for? If you don't choose a meaning, life will choose random meanings for you. Approval, status, comfort, distraction. And those meanings aren't strong enough when pressure hits. Strong minds choose theirs deliberately. They define values. They set a long-term goal. They attach daily pain to a future payoff. And then they protect that meaning with one of the most underrated skills in psychology, control of attention. Because attention is fuel. Whatever you feed, attention grows. Fear grows. Anger grows. Gratitude grows. Clarity grows. Mentally strong people don't let their attention get stolen all day. They don't give every notification the same importance as their mission. They train attention like a muscle. And this is where the practical blueprint starts to come together. You regulate your state to stop the spiral. You build grit through identity and small daily proof. You train courage through progressive exposure. You anchor meaning so discomfort has a purpose. But there's still one final trap that destroys people who seem strong. It's a trap of trying to stay positive at all costs. And the strongest minds avoid it with a paradox that sounds cold until you realize it's freedom. The strongest minds aren't the ones who constantly feel good. They're the ones who can handle feeling bad without making it mean something about who they are. That's the trap, emotional permanence. When you feel anxious, you assume your life is unstable. When you feel tired, you assume you're failing. When you feel overwhelmed, you assume you're weak. Strong-minded people don't do that. They treat emotion like weather. Real, present, temporary. That doesn't mean they ignore feelings. It means they don't worship them. They don't build identity on a mood. This is why Stoic thinking keeps showing up in resilient people, even if they've never read a single philosopher. The core idea is simple. You can't control the outside, but you can control the inside. Not perfectly, but enough. You can control the interpretation. You can control the next action. You can control the story you repeat. And when your mind learns that, something shifts. life stops feeling like a constant threat. It starts feeling like a series of problems you can solve. Here's a tool you can steal immediately. When something goes wrong, ask one question: what part of this is mine? Not who's to blame. Not why me. Not what if everything collapses. What part is mine to handle? Maybe it's one phone call, one honest conversation, 1 hour of focused work, one boundary. That question pulls you out of helplessness and into agency. And agency is the emotional core of mental strength. It's the feeling that no matter what happens, you can respond. That's why mentally strong people look calm. They're not calm because life is calm. They're calm because they trust their response. So if you want a strong mind, stop chasing permanent confidence. Chase competence in recovery. Practice returning to center. Practice doing the next right thing when you don't feel ready. Practice telling yourself the truth without crushing yourself. And if you're listening to this thinking, I'm not built like that, good. Because that thought is the beginning of the training. Strong minds aren't born out of comfort. They're built in the exact moments you want to quit, avoid, scroll, or numb out. The moment you choose differently, even once, you start changing the pattern. And that's the real promise here. You don't need to become fearless. You need to become unshakable, which means you need one final thing, a simple daily protocol that rewires your mind over time. And it's so small most people ignore it until they realize it's the whole game. Here's the protocol. It's boring. It's simple. And it builds the kind of mind people secretly envy. First, 1 minute of control. Every day, pick one tiny practice that tells your nervous system, I'm in charge. Slow your breathing for 60 seconds. Take a short walk without your phone. Sit in silence. The goal isn't relaxation. The goal is training the return path back to clarity. Second, one act of commitment. Choose one task you finish no matter what. Small is fine. The point is to stop negotiating with your own promises. The strongest minds trust themselves because they keep their word to themselves. Third, one controlled discomfort. Do one thing you usually avoid. A difficult email. A short conversation. One tiny exposure. Not chaos. Controlled exposure. You're teaching your brain, discomfort is survivable. That's how courage becomes normal. Fourth, one meaning reminder. Write one sentence. Why are you doing all this? Who are you becoming? What are you building? Your why is fuel. Without it, discipline feels like punishment. With it, discipline feels like alignment. And finally, one perspective reset. At the end of the day, ask, what did I handle better than the old me would have handled it? Even if it's small, that's evidence. Evidence changes identity. Do this long enough and your brain starts updating. Stress hits, but you recover faster. Fear shows up, but it doesn't get to vote. You stop needing perfect conditions to perform. You become the person who stays steady when things get loud. And that's what extremely strong minds really are. Not people who never struggle. People who have trained the skills of struggle. So the next time pressure hits, don't ask, why am I like this? Ask, what would a trained mind do next? Then do one small thing. Breathe. Choose. Commit. Expose. Repeat. That's the blueprint. If you want more documentaries like this, and you want practical psychology you can actually use, subscribe and stay close. Because the strongest version of you isn't hiding somewhere inside. It's built on purpose.